Hi guys, it's me, Ted Simpson. I'm here with another super quick painting video here. Let's get to it. Now, if you saw my last video, I had a 24 by 36. Well, that took almost 2 hours, so that was about my limit. So we're going to go back to the 12 by 16. I'm going to do a nice, super fast, fun, no mountain video today. I've been doing so many mountains lately, I figured I'd give you guys a break. And at the same time, give myself a little break. So, 12 by 16, set in the landscape format here. I've already coated the canvas with a thin, even coat of the liquid white. And I'm just going to test it here for you. A couple little taps. Let's see, come on, focus. There it is, look at that. It's a little bit on the heavy side. It's still, I can still see the grooves of my finger through it. You know, if you're worried about it, you could always give it a quick wipe. You know, there's a fine line between wanting a little too much on there and not enough. I hope that made sense. I'm trying to think if it made sense to me. So, I'd rather you have a little too much on there than not enough. Come on, focus. Come on, get it, get it. Yeah, okay, it's not working. There it is. Too much on there and things can get a little sloppy. Too little, and you're really going to see those dry areas. So, what do we do first? Of course, we do the thing that's furthest away, which is our sky. And so I think I'll start out here with a little bit of phthalo blue. Look at that. I gotta remember, I got my camera slightly offset here, so I'm gonna try to remember to keep that offset so you guys can see that. Boy, I don't really need much. I think I put out way too much paint. I might have to do a double video today if I have so much paint left over. And you see a little bit more liquid white will give you softer, faster blends. And things can get really soupy really fast here. But as I'm going through here, all I'm focusing on is getting a general sense of my sky. How blue do I want it? How bold do I want it? You know what? Today I want it a little bolder. So I go back, pulling out a little bit of paint, bash it across the full width of the brush. We don't want like chunks on one side and no paint on the other side, because I use both sides of my brush to apply it. So you definitely want paint on both sides of the brush. And look at that. Going over it a second time makes everything a shade bluer, a shade deeper blue. Bob always talks about value. That's how deep the color is. How pure, how dark. A lot of interchangeable terms here. Okay. What I'm going to do to spice things up is I'm going to add a little bit of Prussian blue. Maybe a touch of that phthalo blue. Prussian blue, phthalo blue. And like I did before, and I've done this a number of times here, so I'm going to put some darker, deeper value in the corners. And maybe even across the top a little bit. That helps draw the eye into the center of the painting. But you'll notice here I'm not just dumping on tons and tons of color. That's going to make the clouds really, really soupy. Okay, not really focused on any of these lingering brush marks, of which there are a few. Just trying to figure out my color first. Then, I'll put my brush down, my palette down, clean my brush, just here in the paper towel. Once I got a nice clean, mostly clean dry brush, then I go back here, starting in the middle, working my way up. I'm hitting this with that beveled edge. Try to avoid raking the bristles, like just it'll pull off that paint a little every stroke. and actually make more lines. When you're trying to take them away, you don't want to add any, right? So use that beveled edge. More pressure moves color. Less pressure takes out brush marks. Just like that, we've got our scene. And believe it or not, no water today. No water at all. What we do have are some nice, big, bold clouds. So, the first thing we're going to do with those clouds is let's make some shadow. I'm taking a bit of alizarin crimson, a lot less phthalo blue. Here's your ASMR portion of the painting. There we go. Pull some of that out. Oh, I think we got a nice purple. A nice bluish purple today. We'll find out. I'm going to clean my brush in some paint thinner here. Boy, that is some dirty paint thinner. I forgot to clean it. Forgot to change the bucket. Oh boy, that's much cleaner now. Couple on the easel. That's my Bob tribute. So, a little bit of this purple color here, and let's be free. Look at how far out I'm holding this brush. I'm just making some little circles. I'm actually lowering the brush handle a little and making some circles to make a nice clean bottom. I don't really care how much I cover here. I just want the bottom to be relatively clean. Something like that. Maybe even a little right there. What the heck? I always try to mix it up for my reference photo. There it is. That was simple enough. I sure made a lot of paint just for that, didn't I? I'm going to wipe off most of that paint, just stirring it into a paper towel I got on my shelf here. Getting most of that color off. Now, I'm going to go over it very lightly. Tips of the bristles this time. Just you can kind of hear those rake marks, those noises. And I just want to soften this cloud. I'm actually trying to soften it upwards a little bit. Trying to keep that dark line dark. A couple of crisscrosses. It'll take away some of those flyaways. Maybe not all of them. But look at that, some little varying colors here. Some are darker, some are lighter. Excuse me. Now, I'm stirring out any little bit of paint that I got in there, and you feel free to wash your brush as much as you want here. But I have my paint in somewhat of a ramp here. Now what I'm going to try to do, I'm trying to keep my brush relatively straight. I just want it to be pointing at the ceiling here. So as I pull away, see here, I'm not like scooping, I'm not paddling the canoe. I don't want to just take the paint and pull it all into one edge. I want it on the tips of the bristles. So I pull, and if you stop and lift away, you see all that nice texture there? Lots of paint right up here on the tips of the bristles. I'm pulling and doing this normally here. We'll start to create this little rounded corner on the bottom. This little rounded thing. We want the rounded thing facing up. Now I can put in the bright part of this cloud. All these nice bright areas here, and you might have to reload the brush often. I want to get some chunky paint out there. Just stirring it, getting the white off, bringing it down to just overlapping the purple. Reload the brush, put some more on there. Just want it nice and chunky. I'm going to stop right there. Just going to stop. Look at this. I swear it's like 1/8 of an inch sticking off the canvas. That's okay. I'm going to come back with my 2-inch brush, and anything but the top edge is fair game, just to give it a light little tickle. Barely touching. Barely touching. Down here where it meets the purple, I'm just barely softening. Have I made it clear how light we touch it? Very, very light. Just want to soften a little bit of that chunkiness down. Then I fluff. I do that nice lift. I don't want to stretch the paint. I just want to soften it where it sits. I want to leave it kind of chunky, kind of thick. That'll give it its fluffiness. Barely touch. Barely touch. Some of it's brighter, some of it's not as bright. It's okay. Worst thing you can do is go over it 800 times, you know? But what I can do is add a new funny bit there, a new funky shape here. Maybe there's another cloud or another shape to the same cloud. Putting more on there. Same thing. Tickle, 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 tickle. Barely, barely, barely. Fluff. Finish sideways. That section's done. Maybe we've got a whole nother cloud here. Yeah, just trying to create this interesting top edge, these nice little fluffs. Ooh, maybe this is a whole nother cloud. There we go. Some of it's shadowed. And even kind of pre-soften it just with that same old brush. Tickle, tickle, tickle. Soften where it meets the shadow. Fluff up. Ooh, very lightly finish it. You really shouldn't try to take too much time with this, or else you spend too much time on it and it stops looking like fluffy clouds and starts looking just like smears. Here I am doing exactly what I said not to do. Don't mess with it too much. There we go. Look at that fluffy sky. Nice and interesting. Let's move on. I'm going to take a little bit of that purple. I'm going to add a little bit of black and brown and just a touch of green to it. It's going to turn that nice purple even duller down to plum, and then the brown and the green will just dull it even further. Just looking for some shadow here. Now, to give you an indication, it does look black, but if I were to take a little bit of white, put some color into it, look at that grayish, greenish color. That's pretty much what I got, but I get rid of it. Don't want to accidentally put that into the scene here. So, before I jump ahead, let me show you something here. Lots of chunky white paint. Squeeze and pull. Give it a stir. Then I go into the bucket. Keeps your paint thinner a little less clogged up with dirty color. Okay. Oh, I just checked to make sure my sound was working. That's nice. Okay, so if we're doing this the simple way, and why the heck not, Very little color. Very little color. Maybe even a touch of white. What the heck? I changed my mind. Alright, so we're going to put in a little foothill here. Ooh, I just realized how dark that is. I had a lot of paint in my brush and it will come off nice and dark on you. Now, you can see here I'm just taking that same color and I'm creating a nice outside edge. There it is. And then I use that color and I just soften it down and it fills it in downward so it reaches kind of a flat plane here. Not really too concerned because we are going to do a little bit of highlighting to it, no big deal. So in that spirit, I'm going to bash the heck out of the bottom here with my 2-inch brush. It still has a little bit of liquid white on it. I've got liquid white here on the canvas. Tapping, destroying the bottom here. You can go up a little bit, down a little bit. Creating a little bit of mist, as much or as little as you want. And if you misted it out too much, well, you can come back and tap in some color. Look at that, we can create like an extra plane here. A little bit of indication of maybe what foothill is in front of which. It's up to you. Nothing's set in stone. Kind of gives you a thought, a feeling, something like that. Then, I'll tell you what, just taking a little bit of green, I'm going to tap it right into that color, just to green it up a little bit, maybe a touch more. Find out what color works for you here, and let's see about putting just an indication of highlight. Maybe something like this. Here and there. Tapping, tapping, tapping. You can see as I run out of paint or I lighten my touch, a little less comes off. You can create bright spots and dull spots and everywhere in between spots. Just turning my brush to try to keep a nice edge to it. Now watch this. I come over, pick up a little more paint, tap a little harder. Look how it adds another little foothill right here. Something like that. Maybe this one's a little closer so it has a little more on it. Alright. Now, I'm going to make another color here. I'm mixing in a little bit of that green into that purpley brownish whatever color I made. Create another foothill right over the base of the first one. This one's a little flatter maybe. Same concept, it's a little bolder at the top, a little faded, lighter at the bottom. And this is just the shadows again. Ooh. I think in my reference picture here I had like 2 or 3 different layers here, but I don't really have the room for it on this canvas. I've already gone down pretty far. So let me clean this brush super quick. Got some dark on there. Shake out the brush. Got my 2-inch brush here, just going to create a little bit of mist at the bottom of this before we highlight. Ooh, nice. Follow the angles here and create some more of this foothill in the angle that you prefer. There we go. Now with this one, I'm going to come by here and pick up a little bit of yellow ochre. And let's just try a little bit of yellow ochre here. Back and forth, tapping some color right up on the tips of the bristles. Let's create a different shade here. Do the ones that you think is further away first. That allows you to easily overlap yourself as you move to the other foothills, the closer ones. That overlapping helps create the perspective. Okay. The more you tap, the softer it'll get. If it looks a little too spotty for you, want to make it a little silkier, smoother, just keep tapping. Too much tapping will make it all just turn to mud. So you gotta keep that brush moving and just do it until you like it, and then try to stop. Try to stop. Something like that. Okay. I want to say here, we need some ground, okay? So, that same color here with a bit more brown and some green in it. Less of the purple tone, more so brown and green. Ooh, that's not bad. And let's just pull some, oh, a little too much green. A little more brown. That's a little better. Look how I just pull a little bit of color. Create the foreground look here. Something like that. Doesn't take much. Doesn't take much. Especially on this small canvas. Alright, I tell you what, let's change the color again. A little bit of the green, yellow ochre, I'm sorry, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre with a touch of green in it. Let's just do it right over here. A little more of the yellow ochre to dull it down. Then maybe a little more green. You figure out what color speaks to you here. And let's go ahead and let's just tap a little bit of this. Nice low-lying grass here. It's almost like a putting green. Just nice and soft, short. Now if I was to take this same color, just add a little bit more yellow to it, I can pick out a spot or two. Just has a little bit lighter look to it. Just putting something out there. Okay. Now, since I already have some color laid out here, this undercolor here, let's just pull it, just the bottom of it. See if we can't pull it a little bit further out. If it doesn't work, well, you know, you can always pick up a little more color. I'm trying to create kind of a road here, or a path. So if you don't have enough color on there, just pick up a little bit more on your brush. Pull some out. This is basically just brown. How far is up to you. More paint on your brush, it will start getting bolder and bolder. But the more you go over it, it'll keep picking up the liquid white and change the brightness as well. So it's okay to have lights and darks kind of working together here. I tell you what, maybe even a touch of the dark sienna in a spot or two. Change the color. And then I'm going to take my 2-inch brush and just soften this a little bit. That liquid white, that is, as Bob would say, that's your good friend. Okay, so I think before I do too much else here, I'm going to change this up a little bit. Maybe there's a little bit of a hill here. Just going to drop that in. Change it up a little bit. Maybe even add a little bit of brightness right there. That's about it. There we go. Now, let's go ahead and let's drop in a fun little cabin. So, I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff here, pull it out nice and flat, cut off a little roll of paint, and let's just drop one of these guys in here. Start with the back eave. Then our roof. All I'm focusing on now is just the basic shape here. Getting some clean lines. Sometimes Bob will do this little cheat here to get a nice clean line. Little indication of the front, little indication of the side. Just using our little rolls of paint and as little strokes as you can handle there. Got to be careful not to have any kind of an angle, or else you just scrape the paint right off. You want to layer it on, just sort of slather it down so it stays nice and dark. That'll allow us to get the shadows on. And highlights. I'm going to have to do a little cabinectomy here at the end. something like that. You can see here the roof line. You can see here kind of where I scraped it off. You want that a little bit flatter. Then there'll be a nice bold base color for us. All right, our highlight color, a little bit of dark sienna, a little bit of white, maybe a little bit more white, kind of streaked out. There it is. Just kind of marbled out there. And then very lightly, just grazing it over the brown, not really trying to mix them together. Just these light little slather downs, if that's a term. Maybe you can change it and you can add to it. Just each time you do it, you gotta use an even lighter touch. Look at that. Very light, little extra highlights on these old boards here. And if you don't like it, well, that's the easiest thing in the world to fix. You just keep going over it, and it will keep mixing with the dark brown and just dull and darken the more you go over it. See that? I find a slightly darker color, if I mix a little bit of my brown into that highlight color, we can highlight the back, letting that stay a little darker, a little more in shadow than the face. That's what's going to make it look different, having two different colors there. I want to say, I'm going to have a little bit more highlight. I know, I'm breaking my rule again. The least strokes as possible. But that edge right there seemed a little dark for my taste. There it is. Now, before I put in anything else, I'm going to take a little bit of brown on the edge of my knife and just cut little indications of boards. Even on this side, just a couple of indications here. Now I can make my door. A little bit of the brown. Touch and pull to the side. There's our door. Maybe on the short side of the knife, I can make a window. Ooh, that was 2 strokes too many. On that door frame there, very little color, just a touch of the liquid white, and I outline the door frame. This takes a bit of a steady hand to touch, cut, touch, cut across. You may get it, you may not get it. Same thing with the window. I don't like to go around the whole window, but just an indication on 1 or 2 sides makes it pop. There it is. Ooh, I'm gonna leave it. Now, before I move on, if I was to take a bit of red into my highlight color here, dark sienna and white, a little bit of bright red, let's put a little indication of some shingles here. Very lightly, touch, touch, touch. Tendency is to overdo it here, so you just got to get some on there. Let there be some dark remaining. Then I'll take a touch of the liquid white, titanium white, kind of all mixed together here. Very small line. Outline that back edge. maybe the front edge. Maybe just a little bit there. You outline the whole thing, it kind of looks a little cartoony. Alright, do my cabinectomy, scrape off the bottom, figure out where the side is. Then maybe we're going to have some little bushes and things all around here, so let's just drop some of that in. Cover up some of the bottom there. And we're going to go over this anyway and put in some other stuff, but a little bit of indication of bushes all around there. And there'll be a path. See that? There'll be a little bit of a path coming away from the door. Good. I'm going to take a little bit of those yellows and greens and bash in some highlights here of those bushes. Let there be a little bit of dark in and around. Create a little bit of shadow in there. Covered up a little bit of that pathway just to make it look like the bushes are kind of overgrowing this old cabin here. There it is. And I clean up the bottom if it needs it. There it is. Well, alright, that cabin's living in something. We got something else going here. So, let's figure it out. Got all this color here to work with, all these darks. Let's mix it in with that original cloud purple. Ooh, look at that, we got lots of color here now. Add a touch of green to it. Maybe even a little more green. Oof, takes a little while with this shorter knife here, the small knife, but it doesn't need to be mixed completely thoroughly, just somewhat mixed together. I think I need to swap out my paper towel. Starts to get a little messy. Makes it harder to clean. Where are we at? Oh my gosh, we went a lot longer than I planned on here. That's alright. So, let's go ahead and make some big old leafy trees here. Some color up here on the brush. Ooh. Something like that. Just a nice dark color. Kind of comes right on down here, and oh, who knows what's going to happen. Let's just drop it in. All right. There, kind of rounded that over a little. Automatically looks better. Okay, so see how fast that goes in, huh? Clean all that dirty stuff out. This is probably one of my favorite things Bob does, is he spends most of the episode just on this portion here, then wha-bam, just drops this in a heartbeat. Wonder where the time went. So, plenty of liquid white. I'm going to thin down Some cad yellow here. Plenty of color. Let me get just a touch more. Want to have plenty of very thin color up in the brush. A little bit of green. Tapping it. Working it back and forth. You see how it's creating this chiseled edge? Let me show you that up close. Want that paint right up there on the tips of the bristles. I sometimes call this a little bit of a snowplow. You gotta find the angle here. You don't want the brush too low and you're just pushing it all on the bottom or inside the middle. You want it right up on the tips. Top. That way it comes off nice and bright. Look at that. And then as I tap away, do you see how it gets darker and duller? Just like that. Boy, that looked a lot more green on the palette, didn't it? It will keep getting, it'll look more yellow on your palette there. There we go. There's a little bit darker here. Tapping, letting it get duller in spots here. And most importantly, keep working down. Don't keep going up. It won't look right if you start tapping more up here. Overlap yourselves. Just in short order, you get some nice highlights. Now maybe at the bottom of this tree, we just chop it off, change the color, and all of a sudden that tree gets pushed back and there's some bushes in front here. Happens quickly. There's not a lot of canvas space here, is there? Maybe all this is just kind of low-lying wild stuff. Before I finish that wild stuff, we got one more little bush here. A little bit of bright red, yellow ochre, all this green and yellow. Put a little dull spot in there, makes the bright spots stand out. Something like that. Look how quickly that works. If I take a little bit of knife and scrape in a little bit here and there. And over here. All right. Well, I've got a lot of paint left. And we got some other stuff to do. So a little bit of color on both sides of the brush. Dark sienna, Van Dyke brown. Let's just bravery test it. There we go. Maybe. There's a little arm there. And now, let's see about putting a little highlight on there. If I was to take a little bit of the white, liquid white, mostly titanium white, barely any liquid white. Let's just run it down the left side here. Look at at that. We had a little bit of sunlight kind of zinging off the right side, even on this one here. Just a little indication of a bright spot. Now we get to play around a little bit. Bit of Van Dyke Brown, paint thinner, really thinning it down so we can make some little branches. If it's not thin enough, you really won't get much to the tree. It really needs to flow off the brush to get these longer ones here. Maybe right on over these clouds. There we go. Now these have a lot of branches kind of lifting up here. They're really going to hold some leaves and little canopy, I think. All these branches kind of have an upward face to them. An upward motion, I should say. Couple over here. You might notice here my tree looks a little stumpy right there. Doesn't really matter so much since we're going to be putting some foliage on there, but if you want to thin it out a little bit with your liner brush, feel free. But don't fret too much over it. So we're going to do the same thing we did before with a little bit of this dark stuff here. We're really going to just drop in some sections of canopy, as I said here. Now this is a slightly thinner paint, this dark shadow color. It's a little thinner in consistency than the titanium white, so if you've got plenty of color on the brush, it should stick just fine. But be bold with it, tap it, and move on. This is right up in the foreground here, so it should be a little bit bolder, darker, deeper in value. That's going to allow the highlights to stand out. So don't be afraid to use the paint. Did I take away too much cloud shadow? Maybe. Oh well. I'm happy with it. A little more color in there. So now when I come back with my highlight, I'm going to add just a little bit of Prussian blue. That's going to change up the green color. Plenty of color, plenty of liquid white. We want to make sure that this paint sticks. Tap. And let it get duller. Tap. Move it, move it, move it. One little section of the tree at a time. There it is. Now if I just have this same brush here, I can clean up the foot just by tapping a little bush right in front of it. Push that tree away. And I think we'll have a completed painting. One thing I'm going to try, for the heck of it, I'm going to go into a little bit lighter color here. It's the yellow, maybe even a touch of white. Let's just get some paint up on this highlight brush. Maybe there's a spot or two where it's catching the light. Just looks a little brighter in a couple of spots here. Add some final little detail into our canopies there. Maybe one more. I know if it starts to feel good, do too much. There we go. That one there, that's a dead one. So, with that being said, I think we got ourselves a finished painting. I'm going to thin down a little bit of the bright red. We're going to get crazy here. I'm going to sign it. Oh gosh, where should I sign it? I'll just sign it traditionally right here in the bottom left. A little T, a little S, a little 2, a little 4. That 4 is really hard to see. There we go. And we've got ourselves a done one. So, thanks so much again. I really appreciate your support here on my channel. Things are progressing, so take care all. I'll see you in the next video. Happy Friday.